So for me, Thrive and Survive is about living life at a higher standard. It's about growth and evolution and trying to be the best version of yourself every day. And thriving is living a life by design. It's not letting your environment dictate your standards, it's you choosing it for yourself. What would you say for you does thriving mean in your life?
So for me, thriving is very different from surviving.
Sure.
And what this podcast has done for us in the last 50 episodes is that it's allowed for me to what I call quantum jump. So jump from the state of survival to thriving.
Yeah.
Purely just off the discussions we've been having.
Yeah.
So for me, thriving is basically living at a higher state of mind. It's tuning into your true self and unleashing your true potential.
10 out of 10. Yeah, look, I think the great thing about the podcast is you don't want to be a hypocrite. So, if you're saying you need to live by these standards,
For sure.
it actually puts an emphasis on you to strive to do that yourself.
100%.
So, I think it'll be good for us to talk about the story so far and what the roadmap going ahead is. The last 50 episodes, we've been doing it strictly on Zoom. We've had a couple of guest interviews, but it's been more about building that momentum and that consistency, and also seeing if we actually wanted to do a podcast in the long run, because you don't know if you want to do it until you do it, right? And now we are stepping up to that next evolution of in-person, and for the next 50 episodes, strictly guests,
For sure.
which is exciting.
For sure.
So that's the roadmap. And now for the real meat and potato of the episode, it's talking about some of our favorite principles that we've covered so far.
For sure.
So the first one is the subject of being authentic, which I think is something that both of us appreciate a lot. For you, what is authenticity and why is it important to be authentic?
For sure. So, authenticity for me is the first thing you need to do when you wake up, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at how human beings are defined, you're defined as an individual. An individual, it means that you're not like anybody else.
Sure.
And I think where individuality is derived from is when you are truly authentic. Because no one can be authentic like you are. Over and above that, what I realize about when you are authentic is that you also vibrate at a different frequency.
Yeah, that's true.
So people are able to feel authenticity, and authenticity is the currency of connection. So the minute you are not authentic, you find it harder to connect with people.
Absolutely.
And if you do, those connections will not be long lasting.
Yeah.
So for me, authenticity, like I said, it's about individuality, but over and above, it is the main connector between human beings.
Yeah.
And it allows for people to connect with you on a deeper level so that you can live out your purpose and do what is best for the relationship between you two.
100%. And you know what, I think the beauty of authenticity is its truth.
For sure.
I think it's fair to say, as guys who have been recording on Zoom and we now step into an in-person podcast, there's always a little bit of nerves there. You are experiencing a new thing, and that's you don't really know how to handle it in the moment.
For sure.
And I think authenticity, by being vulnerable, you give other people permission to be vulnerable as well.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And I like this principle because for me, and I think every person has had a moment in their life where they weren't authentic.
Yeah.
I haven't met a person who hasn't had that.
For sure.
And you have that pressure to be accepted by your environment and by your peers. But you realize when you embrace authenticity, you find your tribe.
Yes.
The people that really like you for who you are.
For sure.
And also you find out what you want out of life. So, I hear a complaint, a very common complaint from people is, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't like what I'm doing. I'm not living a life of my choosing. I think the correction to that is authenticity.
Yeah.
And honesty with yourself, saying, who am I? What do I want? and what do I really think?
For sure.
And embracing that imperfect version of yourself and working on that instead of pretending to be someone that you're not, you know?
And I like that you said that, right? Because like if you look at what authenticity is, right? It's a skill. It develops over time. And then if you look at like the timeline of a human being, when you're unconscious, when you're a baby, you are your most authentic self.
100%. You don't give a
Right.
shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then because of the system that we live in, there's something that they call social conditioning.
Yes.
So as you grow up, your mind then becomes conditioned by your social environment.
Yeah.
Friends, parents, schooling,
Survival. It's a survival mechanism.
100%. And social conditioning happens in blocks, in batches.
Right.
Right, so you're in a classroom, the social condition for this classroom is X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So with enough of that happening in your life, you then lose touch with your authentic self
Yep.
because the system has groomed you to become a specific way.
Yep.
And what I like to term coming home or getting enlightened is the return from social conditioning to yourself,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Where man comes to himself. And
Absolutely.
that is the journey of this authenticity, where you then build the skill to become more authentic. And when you become more authentic, genuinely connect with people, and are
Yeah.
able to find your purpose within each and every relationship.
And you know what's really cool about that? As you were speaking, I was thinking, you were talking about surviving, right? If you look at it from the paradigm of thriving and surviving is fitting in.
Yeah.
Surviving is being a part of the crowd.
Yeah.
You feel safe, you feel accepted.
Yeah.
Thriving is being able to stand out from the crowd, which is what everybody wants.
For sure.
But they don't know how to do it, and they're scared to do it.
For sure.
So it's counterintuitive because, you know, there's this pressure on you to find a tribe and to be part of a crowd and to survive.
For sure.
And but then when you actually get to the end of the day, you realize the guys that succeed in life are the guys that are authentic and make a stand out.
100%.
Awesome. Okay, so that was the first one. The second one, which is also one of my favorites, is the principle of you can have it all and be it all, just not at the same time. Which is, so what does that mean to you? What do you think about that?
So for me, that just screams patience, right? And evolution. I think, you know, a very good example is the fact that you can't be in New York and Tokyo at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And so does that apply to many things in life, particularly your goals and achievements? And I think the secret to really being it all and having it all is enjoying it as it comes, right? Instead of rather enjoying everything at a later stage.
Sure.
You know, so I always look at life like, you know, how do you gain enlightenment and grow your gratitude through enjoying every day that comes,
Yeah.
rather than delaying your joy to wait for.
Some future that's not gonna come.
And with that being said, life is not guaranteed, right? So
Absolutely.
the way to happiness is every day.
Yeah.
It's not to the destination. And for me, that's basically what this means. Like, how do you enjoy the journey, and how do you make sure that what is in front of you is what you're appreciating?
Yeah.
Because that creates joy. When you live a joyful life, you're then able to feel like you have it all, even though you don't at that point in time.
Absolutely.
And you know, yesterday I was reading a very interesting quote that said, you know, enough is as good as a feast. You know, because there is a diminishing point
Yes.
of returns when it comes to the things that we chase in life.
Absolutely.
So it's also about understanding that optimal point where overconsumption ends up being the best of you.
Yeah, you know, it's like you look at that 80-20 principle, right? 20% of inputs give you 80% of the outputs.
Yeah.
You know, if you're studying for a test, getting 80%, you just have to nail that 20. But going from 80% to 90 to 95, the amount of work that's required for that,
For sure.
it's traumatic.
100%.
And the return is marginal.
Yeah.
I like what you said there. You know, for me, I think when I hear this principle, I think seasons. You know, in life, everyone has different seasons. We all go through these seasons.
Yeah.
And from my experience, each season has different opportunities and challenges.
100%.
And the role that you can play in that season changes. you know. So the reason why I find that reassuring is because, you know, if I use myself for example, when I was trying to become a chartered accountant, during my articles, my workload was ridiculous. You know, it was like 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week.
Sure.
That's not the time to pick up a hobby.
Sure.
Or to decide you're now going to become a men's health cover model. You know,
sure.
like you're putting too much on your shoulders in that season.
100%.
Then you get to the next season and you realize, well, you know, now I have a lot of time. I've got more resources. I don't have as much pressure on my shoulders.
Sure.
So what else do I want to do?
For sure.
And I like the phrase of be it all because I think in life, too often, we get put into boxes. Society loves that.
For sure.
You know, you're an accountant, you're a lawyer, you're an actor, you're a dancer, you're a whatever.
For sure.
And with those boxes comes expectations of how you should behave and what you should do.
For sure.
Which is bullshit. Because everybody has the potential to do anything.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very reassuring for me to think about this principle of, okay, what season am I in?
For sure.
What responsibilities do I have? And what can I do?
For sure.
And if you decide that you want to take a season where you save up a bunch of money, you quit your job, and you just go and surf for 6 months,
For sure.
that's your life. You can do it.
100%.
You know? So,
And I like that example you used of seasons, right? Because like I always say to you, and a lot of my friends, you're not detached from nature.
yeah,
In the universe's eyes, a tree and Alex is the same thing.
sure.
And therefore you must experience the same seasons.
Yeah.
Summer, autumn, winter, spring. Right? And if you're also going to work against the current of the seasons, i.e. planting a seed in winter, then you're not going to germinate what you want to germinate because you're working in conflict with the universe. So that be it all phrase also speaks to that, right? It speaks to the awareness of where you are now. Because once you're aware where you are now, then you know what to do. Because you understand the environment that you're placing at that current point of time. So the seasons bit is very interesting, and I
That's
think
a great point.
that could be spoken about in more depth.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I think as human beings we forget that we are the same as a tree. We're
Yeah.
the same as any other animal, and we
We have to live by the seasons.
exactly we live opposite to that.
You know, we had an episode earlier on in the journey of Thrive and Survive where we spoke about wisdom. And one of the things we said in that episode was wisdom is living in alignment with the laws of the universe,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And nature. And you used the metaphor there of planting seeds in winter.
For sure.
That's lacking wisdom, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Because you're not living in alignment with that.
100%.
And so I think that's a great principle for a person to remember in life. We can certainly benefit from remembering it.
For sure.
You know, you're in a season of your life now where you have newborn baby, kids, you have so much on your shoulders, your job, everything. You know, so you have to be careful about the seeds that you plant
For sure.
during that time.
100%. 100%.
Awesome. Okay, so this one is one of your favorites. Set goals that develop your character.
Yep.
Let me take a different angle to this question. Which goals in your life do you feel you've set in the past that really developed your character?
Yeah.
And how did they do that?
So for me, the goals that I've set that have developed my character are the ones that seemed at the time impossible. Because the reality with like the goals and these type of things is that you always fall a little bit short,
Yeah.
right? But if you do all the right things with wisdom, then the chances of you over exceeding are also just as high.
Sure.
You know, so the opportunities to fail and the opportunities to succeed are equal.
Yeah.
Because the benefit from both is the same. So when I set these really, really high goals for myself, a lot of the time I fail 80% of the time. But the failures make me smart, and the failures take me to where I need to go. So,
So was it really a failure then?
no.
No.
Exactly, and it's
Yeah.
about framing what failure is, right?
Exactly.
For me, failing is learning fast. Right?
Okay.
So I have this thing that I live by, say fail fast.
Mm.
If you can learn to fail fast, then you learn fast.
Absolutely.
Right? If you fail slow, that failure hits you, demotivates you, it takes you off the course that you originally wanted to be on.
Yeah.
And therefore it takes you backwards because you're going to go start something else. So, I mean, big goal that I set for myself is like, for example, reading 250 books before I turned 30.
Yeah.
You know, it seemed impossible, but the moment I got into the momentum,
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah.
Not to say that I have remembered everything that I read, you know,
You still did it.
but it was a far-reaching goal which very few people are able to do in their lives.
Yeah.
Second thing, when I was 21, I set the goal to be married and have 2 kids by the time I'm 30
Yeah.
and be in a middle to senior management position.
Yeah.
Far-fetched at the time, I hadn't even started university. I wasn't an A, B, or C student, and I didn't even get into university. But it's those goals that allowed me to develop myself to meet where I was going. So the setting goals that develop the character is so important, because when you take your eyes off the goal and focus on the character development,
Yeah.
you then enjoy the journey and you then see the benefit in the failures and you learn to fail fast.
I love that. You know, it reminds me of the guy who came up with it. I can't remember his name, so you'll have to forgive me if you ever see it. But he has this concept of setting A-class goals.
For sure.
And so you've got A-class, B-class, and C-class goals. C-class goals are where you are setting a goal for something that you've already done before. So you're not doing anything new with that.
For sure.
A B-class goal is you're setting a goal where you haven't done it before, but you know how to do it. It's logical.
For sure.
And then an A-class goal is you have no idea how you're going to make this goal happen, but you set it anyways.
For sure.
And his premise is that you should live your life with A-class goals.
Yeah.
Because that's where the growth lies.
100%.
You know, it's saying, I really desperately want to do this. I have no idea how in hell I'm going to do it, but I'll rise to the occasion.
For sure.
And, you know, you were saying there, these goals that you set where on paper, you might not have ticked the box of getting there,
100%.
but you get 90% of the way.
Yeah.
When you set ambitious goals, you get further than you ever thought you could.
Yeah.
And that's why it's superior to a mediocre goal.
100%.
You know?
100%.
I mean, my dad, who's a businessman, he says when he sets budgets with his team, he says to them, okay, this is our target. And they always say, nah, come on, that's unreasonable. We can't get there.
For sure.
They want to set it for 50% of that target. But he says, no, we set it for 100%, we get to the 70%, we got further than we would have got
100%.
with the mediocre goal.
100%.
So,
100%. And I mean, it's such a beautiful analogy, right? And with that being said, I'd like to ask you,
Yeah.
what are some of the far-reaching goals that you've set in your life that you managed to achieve without being fit on paper?
yeah, so the biggest one I would say for me, there's two. The first one is a professional one, which was to become a chartered accountant. And the funny thing is, when I was 17, I had no desire to be that.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a surfer / lumberjack,
Yeah.
as I've said many times.
Yeah.
And then as I began the journey, you know, to me, because it's like a 7-year journey, it always feels like you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
You know, it's always this mountain in the distance that you kind of just working off of faith,
For sure.
you know. And that one really challenged me to not accept failure.
For sure.
Yeah, I said to myself, I'm either going to get it right 100% first time, or I'm going to do something else.
For sure.
I refused to half-ass it, because I saw so many guys in the system who were like permanently in there.
Yeah.
They'd fail a test, and then it's just
For sure.
failure,
For
you
sure.
know.
For sure.
So-
For sure.
That goal, it taught me endurance. It forced me to work harder than I thought I ever could. You know, when I started it, I didn't know that I could work 24 hours, 48 hours.
For sure.
I didn't know I could do that.
For sure.
I didn't know I could lead a team. I didn't know that I could speak to people in C-suite and hold my own. I didn't know those
For
things,
sure.
you know.
For sure.
And then the second one is a bit of a personal one. So for me, growing up, I've always been a bit of a people pleaser. I like to make people happy.
Yeah.
And I also held my parents in very high regard. The goal for me was, when I finished my articles, to quit corporate. And I did. And I really caught hell from my parents for it. Because they had a vision in their heads about what I was going to be and who I was going to be.
For sure.
And up until that point, I'd never really challenged that, you know. So quitting that goal, it was the beginning of me manifesting my authentic self, cultivating my intuition,
For sure.
listening to my instincts, designing my own life. And that was one of the seeds that led to the Thrive and Survive concept.
For sure.
Surviving it's doing what everyone around you expects you to do,
100%.
which is easy.
Yeah.
The environment, the current is pushing you in that direction. Thriving is swimming in your own direction.
Yeah.
So those are two things that changed my life.
For sure.
So that is the value of setting goals and
For
develop your character.
sure.
You know.
And also, like, the character development is so unique to yourself, right? And I always say, it is in times of solitude where you get yourself, right? So the thing about setting goals that develop your character, right, takes you on this journey where you get into a state of good silence. And like I always say, if you believe in yourself, you believe in God, right? You can hear the whispers.
Yeah.
And it is on those journeys of self-discovery, climbing this mountain that seems too high, that you have to start having self-talk.
Yes.
You see, and it's very difficult to have self-talk when you are doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, because naturally you're going to look at someone else's playbook.
Yeah.
And when you look at someone else's playbook, you lose your inner voice.
That's exactly right.
So the real thing is to carve your own path. If you want to hear yourself properly, deeply, and intuitively, carve your own path. Yes, apply the wisdom of others so that you don't do foolish things.
Yes.
But you most likely to have a good self-talk and really experience the God within yourself when you take your own route. And that goes back to individuality.
It does. It's so important. I think there are so many people that leave this earth having never listened to their own inner voice, which is a tragedy.
For sure.
It's a devastating tragedy. And I would also say, on the subject of relationships, there's a lot of talk about how high the divorce rate is.
Yeah.
I would say, just from my outside opinion, I think a big driver behind that is people have chosen partners against their inner voice. They didn't listen to their inner voice.
Yeah.
They were looking at things outside of their soul, so they were looking with their heads, saying, the tick box, like what job does this person have, what family do they come from, X, Y, Z.
100%.
Instead of listening to that intuition and being like, okay, what does my soul say about this person?
100%. 100%.
Okay, so we smacked that one out of the park.
Nice one there.
I think we should now touch on contentment is a state of mind.
Yeah.
I know I've been picking your brain a lot on this episode, but I think this one is a very T-oriented principle.
Thank you.
So,
yeah,
what does that mean to you? What is contentment,
Yeah.
and why would you say it's just a state of mind?
for sure. So I like to look at contentment in two ways, right? So it can be satisfaction or it can be acceptance. But I think when you merge the two, then you turn it into a state of mind.
Okay.
So, like for example, a lot of people like to ask me, how are you doing? And say, I'm content.
Oh, nice.
Right? And what I mean by that is I'm happy with how everything is going,
Yeah.
especially the uncontrollables. So that's what contentment is. Contentment is understanding that there's things I can control, and if I'm doing everything that I can to control the controllables, then I'm content because the uncontrollable is out of my hands. That's in the hands of the universe. I think that's how you change your mindset to then frame contentment as a state of mind. A lot of people don't look at contentment like that. A lot of people look at contentment and measure it in line with consumption.
Yeah.
I will be content when I have 2 million rand. I will be content when I buy my dream house.
Absolutely.
But it's not linked to that. Contentment is in your mind and how you perceive things. And I mean, I'll give you a very good example. The orphanage that we support. Those orphans are probably more content than a lot of people I know in privileged positions.
Absolutely.
Because of their mind.
Yeah.
Controlling the controllables and letting go of the uncontrollables. With esteemed faith that things will get better. I will not leave out the word faith.
Faith is a big part of
When
it.
it comes to contentment. So, yeah, for me, that's what it basically is. It's merging acceptance with the fauna. and then focusing only on the controllables. If you're doing everything you can to make the controllables work for you, then you should be content. Because the rest will sort itself out. The universe will make a plan for you.
Yeah.
And like I always say, the universe has a ticketing system, right? It watches your every move, right? It's not going to let you do anything in vain
Sure.
if it is applied with wisdom.
Absolutely.
And if it is thoughtful and it is coming from your authentic true self.
Right.
Yes, the universe will let you waste your time if you're doing foolish stuff.
Yeah.
And you're deceiving yourself that this is going to bring you profits, right?
Yeah.
But if you're authentic, you're honest, you're applying wisdom, and you're doing things that are in line with your purpose, the rest will take care of itself.
Very true.
Yeah.
It's like if you were to put the universe and God in the same bucket, you know, which they essentially are. It goes back to that parable of Abel and Cain,
Yeah.
right? If I'm not mistaken, and the sacrifices and how God looks at them in different ways.
For sure.
And there's an implication that Cain's sacrifice was insincere, whereas Abel, he gave his best lamb.
100%.
And essentially that's the same with your efforts and your labors. Now, it's like, if you're sincere and you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing,
For sure.
generally the results, you get what you need.
Yeah.
And like we've said before, God gives you what you need, not what you want,
Yeah.
which is not always the same thing.
For sure.
So we get what we need and then we get pissed off about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, to go back to this principle of contentment, you know, it's so true what you said about success is not necessarily kind of guarantee contentment.
Yeah.
There are so many people who achieve tremendous amounts of success at the price of their state of mind.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talked previously about Robin Williams, who, not to disrespect him, but a man who has achieved as much as he did, but ended his own life. That's the ultimate failure. He did not have contentment, you know.
Yep.
So, it's like Naval says, if you're not happy drinking a cup of coffee at home,
Yeah.
you won't be happy on a yacht.
100%.
So there's no amount of success and achievement that can bring you contentment. You have to bring it to yourself right now. You know?
And like the more doesn't mean merrier,
No.
right? And like I said, it starts within yourself. Like you said, if you can't enjoy taking a walk,
You're not going to enjoy a yacht or a Lambo or whatever.
100%. So yeah, for me, that contentment is just focusing on controllables in self.
Yeah.
And for you, what does that mean to you? What is contentment? How do you define it and apply it in your life?
Yeah, for me it's gratitude. And gratitude, I feel like it's a word that doesn't get enough respect. And it's definitely not something that we get taught a lot in our traditional academic environment.
For sure.
You know, I think as a kid, gratitude comes naturally.
Yeah.
And excitement.
Yeah.
But there's something about the social conditioning that it drives gratitude out of you, because we get taught that there's never enough.
For sure.
And that you're not enough. You know, you always have to be better. You have to get more. You have to do more.
For sure.
It's that society that we live in, right?
For sure.
So for me, I would say the last couple of years, gratitude is something that I've really tried to practice consciously,
For sure.
and I have to practice it
For sure.
because it doesn't come naturally. You know, if I don't practice it, I forget about it. Like, I start to think about what's not right in my life, and you know, how am I not enough, or things like that. You got to come back to that voice of saying, you know what, if this is the last podcast I do,
Yeah.
thank God, great podcast.
100%.
If this is my last day, awesome. At least I did something like it with it.
Yeah.
You know.
And I like that the gratitude, right, is this thing I learned from one of my mentors, and she always says to me, gratitude is the portal to access your blessings, right? Or to access the divine. So like I always say to you, there's us, there's our human minds all together, and then there's divine intelligence. Divine intelligence is the universal source of intelligence.
Yeah.
So to break that down into simple terms is 3 people can be sitting in a room, and you pose the same questions, and all of you think of the same thing about communicating to each other.
Yeah.
Right? That's not by chance. That's purely based on the fact that spiritually and neurologically we're connected to one eternal divine source
Yes.
that we tap into when we are in a certain frequency.
Even people on other sides of the world, different cultures and languages,
100%.
scientific breakthroughs
100%.
tend to happen within the same weeks of each other.
100%.
You know?
100%. So that's the universal source of intelligence. And over and above that, they always say nothing invented is ever new, It's just built upon someone else's idea.
Interesting. Yeah, that's true.
So like the car, that was thought of.
Yeah. Standing
Lights,
on the shoulders of giants.
electricity,
Yeah.
all the stuff was really thought of, but not by one person, not by two people,
Yeah.
the thousands of people,
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands, if not millions,
Yes.
right? But the ones who really have taken it to the next level, the ones who tap into that universal source of intelligence, apply it, learn to fail fast, and then get on the other side of success.
Mm.
So yeah, it's very beautiful, but like I said, you can't access that if you're not content and if you don't practice gratitude,
Yeah.
because the portal of gratitude is what gives you the access to everything.
I think before we move on to the next one thing I would just add is like contentment and authenticity are so,
Yeah.
they're so strongly linked.
Yeah.
Like when you embrace authenticity, you become okay with yourself. There's an ease to your being,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
your presence. Like you always use the word operating on a higher frequency,
Yeah.
higher vibration.
Yeah.
You know, like animals respond well to you.
Yeah.
Strangers will share stories with you.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
Like I just met you. Why are you telling me about your life? You know?
For sure.
And I think you go in and out of that state depending on how well you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Like I've had moments in my life where I felt I was definitely operating at a higher frequency,
Mm.
and it was kind of like, you know, just to touch on the inner nerd in me. In Harry Potter,
Yeah.
in the 6th book, there's this potion that he drinks that makes him lucky.
Okay.
And for a day, he just gets everything going his way.
For sure.
And that's what I feel like when you are operating in that state of mind. It's
Yeah.
like limitless power.
For sure.
It's like
For sure.
lucky. Like everything's just working for you.
For sure.
You know.
For sure.
Okay, last one. This is my personal favorite. Between stimulus and response, there is a space called freedom. So, for me, I'm just going to give background on where this comes from, for sure. There was a psychologist by the name of Viktor Frankl, who was a Jew in World War II Nazi Germany, in a concentration camp.
Mm.
And he lost his wife, he lost his kids, he lost everything. He even had the opportunity to flee to America with his family before everything went down. He elected not to because his parents were in Germany, so he wanted to take care of them. He lost everything. And during his time in this concentration camp, to survive, he wrote his book in his head about his observations, about the prisoners around him. And he noticed that the ones that survived were the ones who, their spirit wasn't broken despite the circumstances around them.
For sure.
And he realized that it doesn't matter how terrible your environment is or your external circumstances, no one can ever steal your freedom from you in your head.
Yeah.
No one can corrupt you.
For sure.
You have to corrupt yourself.
For sure.
And that's where this principle of between the stimulus and the response, there is a space called freedom.
For sure.
You have free will. But with that freedom comes responsibility and taking ownership and saying, it's on me how I decide to respond.
For sure.
So if I could say to anyone listening, the one book you should read in your life, it is this book of A Man's Search for Freedom.
For sure.
A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. For you, how does this play in your life, this principle?
Yeah.
What does it mean to you?
So, for me, it's just about observing self objectively in the environments that you're placed in. I'm not a master of it yet. You know, I think it's going to take a long time to get that right. And I'm a human being at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But as I've grown, as I've become a dad, as I've gotten better at my work and engaged with people older and more senior than me,
Yeah.
you learn to start understanding that you have to take that within the parameters of your control if you want to advance in life, if you want to contribute in a positive manner. So, yeah, for me it's just about always when I'm sitting in a situation, even like here, I am within myself and I'm present, but I'm also without myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm observing how I'm interacting with you.
Yeah. Your
And
mind.
I'm observing how I'm interacting with myself in my mind.
Yeah.
Right? Because when I am doing that, I am then creating the opportunity to respond in the best way. And I think the emotion of anger, overexcitement, pride, all those things come into play when you don't observe yourself in the environment. And for me, one of the hardest things to really control in this stimulus and response is pride and ego, especially when things are going well.
Yeah.
Your body and your brain just quickly want to celebrate. So if you can practice that, if you can practice not over celebrating your wins and being humble about it,
yes,
then I think it's easy to control the polar opposite.
Absolutely.
And etc.
The losses.
100%. So yeah, being good and being humble about it, or winning and not being braggadocious about it, allows for you to control every other emotion in your life.
Spot on.
Because that's the hardest one to suppress.
Absolutely.
That's just my personal opinion, but I've experimented enough with it, and I've seen if I can control this, if I can control my ego, and observe myself outside and inside while I'm speaking to somebody, then everything else takes care of itself.
That's very well said. And the cool thing is, so this space that we talk about in this principle of, there's a space called freedom.
Yeah.
I think it's something that you can expand the space with practice.
Yeah.
So your ability to regulate and handle the moment improves as you go on, as you consciously work on it.
For sure.
And the only way I can tell of how a person can work on it is through being in the arena, getting tested, failing, and then analyzing and assessing how can I be better next time.
100%.
You recognize the flaw in arrogance by being arrogant and suffering the consequences of that.
100%.
I always say to my friends, I've never gotten away with being cocky before in my life.
For sure.
I've been cocky, and it always blows up in my face.
For sure.
And then I come back down to earth, and I'm like, okay, shit.
100%.
Let me cool off a bit. Let me chill.
100%.
So, and I think the thing as well that's beautiful about it is, in life, what is inevitable is tragedy. It's not a question of is something bad going to happen. It's when it does, how are you going to handle it?
For sure.
And it's very real that when tragedy happens, the worst can come out of a person, or the best.
100%.
And the thing that dictates that is this space. Where you say, okay, there's death, there's tragedy, there's sickness. How am I going to handle it?
For sure.
Instead of using it as an excuse to fall to pieces,
100%.
which happens, I think everybody has seen it before in their lives, professionally and personally.
100%.
100%. So,
and I like that. Even I liked how you mentioned the fact that you can make the space bigger.
yes.
Alright. And I mean, a practical example that I use that I read in a book is, how you make it bigger is, firstly, when you're engaging with people, take a moment to ask yourself, how am I feeling? Alright, that's just one. Another really great example is to think of all the tragic things that could happen.
Yes.
Obviously, you don't have the mental capacity to foresee everything.
Sure.
But think of the main ones.
Yeah.
And then ask yourself how you would react.
Absolutely.
Because with thinking comes the development of emotion, especially if you think about it long and hard enough, right?
Yeah.
So for example, I think of things like, okay, one day my parents are going to go.
Absolutely.
I need to be able to accept it as part of life. One day I'm going to go, And when you think of these things, you actually feel the emotion.
Yes.
And I think that's phase one of really preparing myself to deal with this event when it does happen. And the same thing with glory. When I get 100 million rand, how am I going to feel? What am I going to do with it?
Yes.
Right? Because if you don't do those things, it's those moments that will destroy your life, right? You can't prepare for it.
Absolutely.
But at least go through the thinking process so that your mind has some sort of familiarity with it when it happens. And another thing I've seen about the mind is that there's preparedness and there's readiness. Preparedness is when you prepare for, but you can never be 100% prepared.
Yes.
Readiness is when your mind is ready for it.
100%.
Because with readiness comes the ability to be agile. And I've shared this with you before, but I once had a presentation
Yeah.
where I'm normally super prepared with my presentations, to the minute, from start to finish, slides, word. And the date that was put up was the wrong one.
Yes. Nightmare.
So my preparedness threw me off.
Yeah.
Because on a mindset perspective, I wasn't ready.
Absolutely.
And what I did to evolve from that process now going forward is that I prepared to a certain extent, but then I focused on my mind. And now, I do presentations I'll preach notes.
Yes.
I go with the flow, I speak from within, and I
Yes.
go according to the response of the crowd.
Yeah.
So readiness comes from, like I said, thinking about those moments, not preparing for them as per se,
It's a state of mind.
yeah, but thinking of them, just hovering over those thoughts. Because like you said, it's not a matter of will it happen, it will happen.
Yeah.
Both glory and tragedy. But you must think about it so that you are ready for it, should it happen.
This is absolutely true. You know, before you wrap up, there's a story that I love to share, which I've shared with you before, and I've shared it on the podcast before. A couple of years ago, I was on a family farm with my brother, and we have these intense veld fires in the winter. And my brother was someone who had lived on our farm for a number of years as a farm manager,
Yeah.
whereas I was working in the city as an auditor. And we came home the one night to see a whole mountain of our farm was on fire. And prior to this event, I had done a lot of research into Stoicism and philosophy. And this principle of between stimulus and response, there's a space called freedom.
Yeah.
And when I saw the mountain was on fire, and everybody was freaking out and was going hysterical, my inner voice was saying to me, this is one of these moments that we've been preparing for.
For sure.
How are we going to handle it? And the choice that I made in that moment was, I'm going to be calm, I'm going to be useful. And it doesn't matter how much time or energy or effort it takes, I'm going to protect this farm.
For sure.
And I didn't feel any fear or any stress. I was just in action. And I share this story because this stuff is practical, this stuff is real.
Yeah.
It will save you.
Yeah.
Your preparation will save you in moments of disaster. And most people don't want to think about it in terms of peace.
Yeah.
But like I said, tragedy it's not a question of will it happen. It will happen. The question is how will you handle it?
For sure.
But yeah, I think we smashed that one.
Yeah, and I like that tragedy theme, right? And I think as closing, it's very important that you think of it,
Yeah.
especially like the non-negotiables of life.
Losing
As an
a parent.
adult,
Yeah.
it is your responsibility to think of the non-negotiables of life. A lot of people avoid it because they want peace of mind,
Yeah.
but the headache that you're preparing yourself for by not thinking about it is one you can never ever imagine
Absolutely.
if you don't embark on those thoughts.
Absolutely.
So I think that's what makes you authentic. That's what stimulates true conversations. And for me, it's thinking about those things that has allowed for me to access my true self. And also allow me to understand what my role is within my community.
Absolutely.
Right? So yeah, I like that between stimulus and response, but it's up to you. Do you grow the space? Do you
Yeah.
limit it?
Yeah.
Because if you don't grow the space, you're not aware of it, then the opportunity to respond accordingly will never present itself and therefore become disastrous in your endeavors of life.
Absolutely. I was just saying a simple way to look at it, it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
For sure.
If you don't use it, it wastes away.
For sure.
And then when the moment comes and you test it, you're not strong enough to handle it.
And if you think about it, not to go on too long, the greatest motivators in the world, the most successful people in the world,
Yeah.
they're the ones who've been through the most.
Yeah, tragedy. Absolutely.
And isn't that a coincidence, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, it's sad, but they had the right perspectives to go through that. And therefore, we now fall in the top 20% to tell everyone else, hey, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, Nelson Mandela,
Yes.
disabled people.
Yes.
I mean, have you ever sat down and spoken to someone who's disabled?
Sometimes they're the happiest people you meet, and they have no right to be.
Or friends. Someone on the street asking for money when there's enough time Spend an extra 30 seconds asking how's your day going, what's up, how's it been?
Yeah.
The energy you can derive from those people is way more than you can even get sometimes in a motivational talk. So
Yeah, it's true.
like I said, it's about that element that you mentioned. And if you don't take the responsibility on yourself, you're really preparing yourself for a me grade, if I must say that. A proper me grade.
Okay, well, look, I think we've now smashed this list out of the park.
Yeah.
That's this episode for us today. I just want to say to anybody listening, I hope that you got some benefit out of this. And like we said at the start of the episode, you know, the roadmap ahead is guest interviews. So the next 50 episodes, it's just going to be us sitting with interesting guests, people that we say, ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
Yeah.
Trying to learn from them so that we can grow in our own lives,
For sure.
and sharing the stories so that hopefully someone else can benefit from it along the way.
Well said.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add before we close?
I think you've said the best, eh?
Alright guys, that's us. End of the episode.